The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
Chicken head, chicken feet, chicken necks is all I eat.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a bucket full of chicken necks. Listen, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody. There's been a lot of new subscribers since we kicked our September plan into place, where you could become a member of the brand for life for $2.99 a month. You can opt out at any time you wish. All you need to do is go to vincerussobrand.com and use the code word brand. We've gotten a lot of new members since the beginning of September, and I'm very, very thankful to that, and I'm very grateful. Let me explain to you what Chicken X is. Chicken X is basically a show every week where I just come on here and I say what's on my mind. You know, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's about my family, sometimes it's about something that's happening in the entertainment world, sometimes it's about something that's happening to me personally in my life. Quite frankly, I don't come on here scripted. I kind of come on here shooting from the hip, saying what's in my heart and saying what's on my mind. And that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, because obviously, the situation is out there with comments that Eric Bischoff, made about me on a WWE network show. I answered those charges, and since there has been, a comeback by Eric, that I will discuss. But this isn't, listen, I'm not going to go back and forth, with them guys. And I mean, I'll get to that in a minute. I've learned, and I kind of learned the hard way, that you just can't have hatred in your heart for other people. And the reason being for that is we are who we are. Because we are a creature of our environment and our circumstances, and a lot of times, whether you're not a negative person or whether you're a positive person or whether you're a nice person or whether you're a nasty person, a lot of that has to do with our upbringings and the morals we were told and the trials and tribulations, we went through in our lives that kind of made us into the adults that we are today. So, a lot of times, like I said, people are a creature of their environment, and a lot of times they can't help themselves. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about me, and I want to give you a little bit about my background that a lot of you may not know, because I understand fully why Vince Russo is the way he is, because it was a lifelong journey to get me to this point, to make me the man that I am today. And I don't talk about it that often, to be honest with you, but especially now, with all the new members supporting me and the brand growing, I want you to really understand me and my fiber and who I am as a man. So when people make frivolous comments, aimed at me, and attacks aimed at me, and bring my character into question, you will understand, the person I am. And then at that point, you can make your own decision. And listen, I'll be honest with you. If you don't believe in Vince Russo as a man and a human being, and standing up for what he believes is right, then quite frankly, you shouldn't support me. I mean, it's that simple. I would hope that you support me because you respect me as a man, and you respect me as a human being, and you honor my word and you honor my integrity, which means the absolute world to me. But I want to give you a little bit of a background, and I really don't want to bore you. So I'm going to try to get through this rather quickly. But I think if you know some of these things about me, you will understand Vince Russo more as a person. So when allegations are made, and the attacks come, and, I'm called a liar and things of this nature, I think you have a better understanding of me and where I'm coming from. I got to tell you something. There's a couple things I remember vividly about my childhood and my upbringing. And the things I remember the most are a couple of things. First of all, my father, did not make a lot of money, with his job when I was growing up. Now, listen, we weren't poor or anything like that as a family. We were a middle-class family like a lot of other families, but my father made an average income. And I can remember that my father had to work overtime every single night, to make ends meet. And I can remember this because I always used to wait for him to come home, and my mother would have to remind me, Dad's working overtime tonight. Dad's working overtime tonight. So I knew that meant to me he wouldn't be home till well later on in the night. So my father's work ethic was he did whatever he had to do to support his family, and he was a very hard worker. But here's something else that I remember, more than anything about my dad. And my dad's 84 years old today. And the same rings true today. My father was the nicest man in the world, and I'll be honest with you. I've met so many people in my life. I've met some good people, and I've met some bad people. But I've never met any individual with the heart of my father. My father, my father is short in stature. He's maybe about 5'7", 5'8". The guy's weighed 140 pounds his entire life. He's not a big man, but he's got a huge heart. And, my father, taught me growing up in life that, you work hard, you do what you got to do to support your family. But in doing so, I would see my father get stepped on. I would see my father be taken advantage of. I would see people walk all over my dad. And that's something that really stayed with me in my life. And as I, got into my later teenage years, a couple of things happened to me. I picked up my father's work ethic. Without a shadow of a doubt, I did whatever I had to do to be the best that I can be. Here's an example. A lot of you don't know this about me. When I was going to college and I went away to school, I went to Indiana. At the same time, okay, let me tell you what was on my plate at the same time. I was working a work study program for the school where I was working I was working with the director of the film class and helping him in his class. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I was editor of the school newspaper, The Shield. Number three, I was vice president of my fraternity. And number four, I held down 2 other jobs at the same time, doing all this while I was going to school. So my work ethic came from my dad, and looking back now, I don't know how I did all that. I don't know how I accomplished all those things, but what I do remember was it was work. And in college, that's where I learned my work ethic. But at the same time, witnessing how my father was taken advantage of, how people walked all over him, how people used him as a welcome mat. That was the second lesson that I learned, where I was not going to be treated that way. I was going to be treated with honor and respect, and I was going to demand respect, but I also knew in doing so, I had to give respect. You earn respect when you give respect, and I was willing to give respect, but I was not willing to ever be disrespected the way I saw my father being disrespected my entire life growing up. When I graduated college, I got married very early at 22 years old, again, doing what I had to do in order to survive. I took a job, for CBS Publishing. My job was I had to sell the textbooks to the professors that they used in class on the college level. I had all the colleges in Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, St. John's, was one of my schools. And I literally had to go to every one of these colleges and have conversations with every pompous college professor you can imagine. And while they were masters in their field, I had to know a little bit about everything, and quite frankly, a lot of areas that I didn't care about. The job, I hated. I dreaded the job. But the fact that I got married at 22 years old, I knew that I had to take care of my wife. And I knew that I had to do whatever I had to do to support her. This is at about 22 where the depression, kicked in for me. I can remember, guys, this is an absolute shoot. This is no joke. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was suffering with such depression and anxiety at the time of newly being married. I took my wife away from her home and moved her to New York. I was now involved in a job that I absolutely hated. I literally can remember getting out of the shower in the morning, getting on my shirt and my tie, which I hate. If anybody knows me, I'm not a shirt and tie guy. And before I left the door, in my house, my clothes were sweated through before I even left the house. And that's the anxiety and that's the depression I was dealing with at that time in my life, doing something that really wasn't me, that I really didn't want to do, because I now had a wife that I had to support. And I got to tell you, just like in college, as much as I hated the job, I excelled at it, because the only way to make real money in that job was you had to earn commission. I think my base salary when I started was about $14,000 a year. You had to make commission in order to make money. And I did make commission. I would excel my sales quota every year while absolutely hating what I did. Okay. In the meantime, that still wasn't enough money, to support my wife. We had Will at that time. I'm going back now 28 years. Will is 28 years. I had to get a second job at a video store at night, because I needed to make extra income. I worked my butt off at the video store. And it was a matter of time before the owners of the video store basically gave me a proposition, asking me if I wanted to buy the store. Of course, I loved video. I loved entertainment. This all goes back to the entertainment days. My parents were able to help me out. I was able to buy the video store. Worked my butt off, opened a second video store. Okay, this is when video stores were just starting out. The business is thriving now. I've got 2 video stores. I'm not even in my 30s yet, okay? Here comes Blockbuster Video. I could not compete with them on a monetary level. Literally within the next year, both video stores were out of business, okay? I had to support my family. Okay. The video stores were out of business. I didn't have a job. I went back to doing what I had to do. I went to an appliance store on Long Island. It's called PC Richardson Son. You can look it up. It's a big chain on Long Island. I sold appliances to make ends meet and to pay my bills. And I got to tell you, no exaggeration. There was a little plaque when you went in, salesman of the month, depending on your sales. And I used to get so much heat because of all the time I was there. I got salesman of the month every single month but one. And basically, I busted my ass. Again, it was a commission job. As hard as you worked, that's how much money you were going to make. But again, I'm in a position where I got a college degree. I earned my own business. I owned my own business. Now I'm selling appliances. And I could not believe I was in this situation. For as hard as I worked, always giving 100%, I could not believe I was in this situation. That's when I realized I had to do something. Make a long story short, I did the radio show Vicious Vincent's World of Wrestling that I paid for with my own money. that's how I got my foot in the door. The letter to Linda McMahon got my foot in the door, the WWE, the whole 9 yards. I go to WWE as editor of the magazine, busting my rear end, literally almost writing that entire magazine on my own, cover to cover. That wasn't enough for me. I said, let's start another magazine. That's when we started WWE, WWF at the time, Raw, the Raw magazine. And if you go back and you look at that magazine in the early stages of that magazine basically was the introduction to the Attitude Era. The things I was writing about in that magazine had never been discussed before. I remember vividly interviewing Bret Hart when Bret was going to WCW and Bret was talking about Eric Bischoff in the WWE magazine. That's the groundbreaking publication that it was. And I'll never forget Vince McMahon almost firing me because I printed that interview, because I knew at that time the wrestling business had to evolve and it had to change. To make a long story short, I wasn't happy with what was happening with the WWE. I was busting my ass on both magazines, but I knew I could give more. I knew I could give more. I knew I could give more. And what do? I throw it all there out on the table to Vince and Linda McMahon. And I said, listen, I can do more. If you don't believe I can, tell me right now. I need to know that, because in my mind, I was going to move on. So again, you talk about honesty. You talk about speaking from the heart. You talk about having confidence in your ability because you know how hard you're working. You know you're not a bullshit artist. You know you're not working anybody. You know that, you're delivering based on effort and based on ethic and based on pride. And that's what gave me the courage to basically said to Vince, I can do more. One thing turns into the next. When I thought I was going to be fired, Vince McMahon went the other way, put me on the creative team with him. We started writing the television. Okay. I got to be honest with you. This is the first time that I really saw the underbelly of the professional wrestling business, because while the WCW was kicking our ass in the ratings, Vince and I were working very, very hard on these shows, and getting that rating back up to a 3 and a little over a 3, but I mean busting our ass on each and every show. And a lot of times it was just the two of us. And I can remember at that time there was an individual that was very jealous of the position that I was in, writing the TV, being close to Vince, going to Vince's house. I'm not going to mention the individual's name, but quite frankly, this individual used to be in pretty much the same spot until Vince made a change, and now I was in that spot. And I'll never forget, man, out of the clear blue sky, this individual calls me in his office and basically says to me, Vince, nobody wants to work with you. Everybody's saying you're difficult to work with, this, that, and the other thing. And I got to be honest with you, it blew me away, because at that point in time, I knew I wasn't that way. You ask anybody that ever worked with me in publications, okay, ever worked with me on the 4th floor at WWE, I would go around the halls of that office every day, clapping my hands, rallying the troops, always up, always having a good attitude, always being positive. I did that on a daily basis. So all of a sudden, when somebody's coming to me and saying, nobody wants to work with you, Vince, they say you're hard to work with, this, that, and I was flabbergasted. So what did I do? I went to those people that this individual said they don't want to work with you. And I went to them very nicely and sincerely. And I said, listen, if there's a problem, If I did anything to defend you, to offend you, please let me know. I deeply apologize. And every single person said, Vince, we love working with you. There's no issue working with you. We never said any of that. That was my first experience of the politics in the wrestling business. And I got to tell you, at that point in time, I went to Vince McMahon and I said, Vince, look, this has happened. I went to those people to apologize if they said there was an issue. Those people said, Vince, there's no issue. So obviously this individual is just making this stuff up, Vince. I don't know if it's out of jealousy. I don't know what it is. But all I know is Vince McMahon looked at me and said, Vince, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And there was never, ever another issue with that individual again. And basically what happened at the WWE was the more and more and more successful we got, the more and more and more Vince McMahon protected me. In other words, Vince kind of set the precedent. If you mess with Russo politically, you're messing with me, because there is a formula that's working now. We're working very hard together. We're doing this thing the right way. And Vince had my back 100% of the time. As the story goes, putting in that kind of an effort for almost 5 years, I was absolutely spent. I had nothing left in the tank, because you got to understand, just like this VinceRussoBrand.com, just like iHeartRadio, nothing has ever changed with me. When I put my name on something, I give 200%. I don't take any shortcuts. I don't get there by playing politics, by being deceitful. I get there by busting my ass. And anybody who's been a member from the brand from day one knows that. But after 5 years of doing that for Vince, I was absolutely spent. He added SmackDown on our plate, without telling us. Finally, I got to the point where I went in his office. I broke down. I cried. I wanted to move my wife closer to her family, because at that time she was pretty much a single mom, because I was working all the time. And, at that point is when, again, you've heard the story a million times, but Vince said to me, Vince, I don't see what the problem is. You're making enough money now. You can hire a nanny to take care of your kids. As a proud Italian man, that was it for me. When Vince blatantly said to me in those words, I don't care about you. I don't care about your family. I just care about the WWE. I just care about my company. I just care about making money in my business. And he made it clear to me he didn't care about Vince Russo. He didn't care about my family. As a proud Italian man at that point in time, I had to get my priorities straight, man. And my priorities were my family. And with those words, he gave me no other choice but to leave. And that's what I did. I left. And that's when I went to WCW. And listen, it was not a money thing. It was nothing like that. It was the pride of Vince telling me, put me and my company before your family, and me saying, no, I can't. I can no longer do that as a man, a husband, and a father. The minute I went to WCW and there was no Vince McMahon protection, there was a huge target on my back, especially when, for the good of the company, I knew the younger guys needed to come up in the ranks, and I knew for the good of the company that was the right thing to do. So as, I'm trying to push, the Guerreras and the Benoits and the Malenkos and the Vampiros and the people on that level, well, of course, I'm in a business where everybody is protecting their spots, and the elder statement I had a big issue with that, because as these younger guys are developing themselves, all of a sudden they're concerned about their future, when at the end of the day, I had a plan for everybody. Recently I did Ric Flair's podcast where I explained to him there was a plan for him, there was a plan for Hulk, there was a plan for Piper, there was a plan for everybody. But I knew we needed to elevate the younger guys. But you got to understand, politically, like behind my back, they're killing me and they're burying me and they're going to my superior. And I knew what was going on. I'm not an idiot. I was in the wrestling business long enough. And that's when I said, you know what? They can do whatever they want to do. My job is to make this show the best that I can make it. I'm not going to get involved in the politics. I'm not going to try to protect myself, because as far as I'm concerned, my work ethic and the way I approach work and the effort that I put into this and my own blood, sweat, and tears speaks for itself. If you want to replace me with somebody that got the job through politics, then replace me with them, because I knew what was going to happen. That's exactly what happened. 3 months in, after everybody was in my supervisor's ear, Bill Bush, he called me in the office. Vince, we're going in another direction. I said, Bill, I'm not interested in that direction. And I went home. 3 months later, Brad Siegel, the head of TBS, the head of TNT, called me back and said, Vince, you got to come back to work. And all the people that got into that position through politics, they were now back on the out. It literally panned out the exact same way I knew it would pan out. Because listen, when you play politics, and when you lie, cheat, and steal, and I want you to understand this in whatever your walk of life is, whatever you do for a living, whoever you work for, if you get ahead by playing politics, sooner or later, you're going to get to put up or shut up time, and you're going to have erased all the competition. And now it's going to be time for you to perform. And the fact that you got there the wrong way, by politicking, by burying other people, and not by working hard, at that point, you're going to be exposed. You're not going to be able to do the job. I knew that would happen to the people at WCW that replaced me, and that's exactly what happened with them. Brad Siegel brings me back, and he partners me with Eric Bischoff. I had no say-so in this matter, but I will tell you this, okay? In my contract read that I was head of creative. That's basically when I said, when Bill Bush said to me, Vince, we're going to go to a committee. I basically said to Bill Bush, Bill, my contract says I am head of creative. I'm not interested in a committee. Unless I'm head of creative, you've breached this contract. That's why I went home and they had to continue to pay me because I was right. So the fact of the matter is, when Brad Siegel put me and Eric Bischoff together, my contract still read head of creative. Now, never at any time whatsoever did Brad Siegel presented in a way that Eric is your superior. You ought to listen to Eric. Eric is the boss. Brad Siegel positioned it in such a way that Eric and I were working together. Now, what he told Eric on the side, I have no idea. I wasn't privy to those conversations. But as far as ever telling me Eric Bischoff was my boss, or Eric Bischoff is the head of creative, or Eric Bischoff has seniority over you, I would have had the same issue that I had when they wanted to go to a committee, and I said, no, I'm the head of creative. So I don't know what side conversations they had, but Brad Siegel never said to me, Eric's your superior, you report to Eric, Eric's the boss, nothing like that. We were working together. Okay. From the get-go, we did not get along, and I think a lot of it had to do, this is speculation, but a lot of it on Eric's part, I believe, had to do with the fact that, quite frankly, I was the guy that replaced him. Listen, when the ratings flip-flopped and now WWE was kicking WCW's butt, Eric Bischoff was out of a job. They needed somebody to fill that creative gap. They hired Vince Russo. So now Eric Bischoff is working with the guy that replaced him. So listen, it's almost human nature that the guy would not like me, that the guy despised me, that the guy wanted his old job back. And it's understandable. I get it. But we never got along. We never saw eye to eye. And from my point of view, to be honest with you, I did not like the way Eric Bischoff treated people. I didn't agree with it. I thought he was a bully. To this day, I think Eric Bischoff is a bully. I'm not a bully. That's not in my makeup. I don't get off on being the boss. I never got off on being the boss. Listen, anybody, again, check your history, man. When I had my role at the WWE, you know what my office was? My office was literally a small wardrobe room, literally like a little bigger than a closet. That's where I worked out of at the WWE. I didn't want a corner office. I didn't want to be on the second floor with Vince McMahon. I wasn't interested in any of that. I'm not an ego-driven guy. I'm not a money-driven guy. I'm a pride-driven guy. I'm driven by putting out the best product I can, watching that show when it's over and saying, yeah, I did that. That's what drives me. That is what always drives me. So as you can see, when you put together a Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff, there's going to be a problem, okay? Because Eric wants to be the boss. He wants to have the power. He wants to make the decisions. He wants to be the guy in charge. Vince Russo wants to get in the trenches and get his hands dirty. He wants to work with the boys. He wants to do whatever he has to do for the show to be the best that it can. He's prepared. He writes the show in advance. He goes to the arena with the show done. Anybody who's ever worked with me can tell you that. That's how I work. So basically what happened is there's a missing piece of the story I think you need to understand. As I'm working with Eric, he's starting to bury things after the fact. So after we would get together and after we would talk about things and then we would do it on television, then after the fact, he would start poking holes in things, and I didn't like this, and I didn't like that. And keep in mind, never had a suggestion with how to do it better. Never had a suggestion. Just the big, boss sitting back. I didn't like this. I didn't like that. I had enough of that, man. I couldn't take the Monday morning quarterback anymore. I called Brad Siegel. I told Brad Siegel, I can't work like this anymore. I can't work with him. We don't get along. We're two different people. Brad Siegel had me and Eric fly out to LA for an emergency meeting. Okay. And basically it was during that emergency meeting, again, where I'm being honest, with Eric sitting right there and Brad Siegel. And I said to Brad, I can't work this way. I can't work where, I'm busting my ass. I'm writing the creative. He knows what the creative is. And after the fact, he's burying things. I can't work this way. I can't do it this way. And basically at that point, Brad Siegel said, okay, Vince, you go ahead and do the creative. You do what you have to do. Again, I don't know what kind of a conversation he had with Eric Bischoff. I just know what he told me in front of Eric. The very next show following that meeting was Bash at the Beach. And basically the way it went down, and I've explained this in my book, and listen, I'm not going to explain this publicly again. You subscribe. You are the people that need to know. You are the people that need to hear it from me and need to decide. Because like I said, if you don't believe me and you think I'm lying and I'm what did Eric call it? I have a track record of lying, whatever the case may be, don't be a subscriber. please cancel your membership. Do not support me anymore if that's what you believe. You should not support a liar, somebody who doesn't tell the truth, somebody who connives. You should not support somebody like me. But the fact that you do, you're entitled to hear this story. And that's why I'm telling you the story. So now we go to Bash at the Beach. Johnny Laurinaitis was the agent. Hulk Hogan had creative control. So I had to write my Bash at the Beach show, and I had to write my Hogan portion, send it to Johnny Ace. Johnny Ace then bounced it off Hulk. Hulk had to sign off on it. The first version I did, I sent to Johnny. Johnny bounced it off Hulk. Hulk went back to Johnny. Johnny came back to me and said, Vince, Hulk does not like this. He is not doing this version. So then I sat there and I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a version where Hulk is going to kill everybody, okay? Everybody, including Scott Steiner. I remember that vividly. But the fact of the matter is, he was not going to leave that building with the WCW title. Why? Because there was a committee meeting earlier that week where we all agreed that Booker T was going to be the new WCW champion. So I had an obligation to everybody on that creative team who voted in the decision to make sure that that came to fruition. So in my view, I didn't care what Hulk did. He could be Superman. He could fly through the air. He could stop spinning locomotives. It didn't matter. He just wasn't leaving with the belt. So I write a second version. This is probably about Wednesday or Thursday now. I send it to Johnny Ace, Johnny Laurinaitis. Johnny Laurinaitis calls me back and said, Vince, Hulk loves it. Hulk is on board. At that point in time, I think everybody's on the same page. Okay, great. Hulk agreed with this. Great. Now keep in mind, guys, if I'm making all this up that, okay, Hulk turned down one script and then he approved the second script, and I'm remembering that he killed everybody, including Scott Steiner. If I'm making all this stuff up, I got to tell you, I have a great imagination to be able to say there was a plan A, there was a plan B, and all this. I remember all this in detail. You can go back and check my book, WCW Killed Vince Russo, that I wrote 8 years ago, whatever it was. This is the exact story in detail. Nothing has ever changed with me. What I found out during a deposition when Hogan sued me for defamation of character, what I found out was late Friday evening after business hours, a fax was sent to the WCW office where Hulk's attorney said Hulk is not going to do basically what is written. He's going to play his creative control card. The problem was nobody saw that fax prior to that Sunday at Bash at the Beach. Now, again, Eric makes the comment, I don't think any clear-thinking person would conflate truth and anything spewed by Vince Russo, #track record. That deposition is on record. Anybody can go check out, do the research, go get the deposition, read in the deposition where all that was explained. That Friday evening, he sent in a fax. Russo never saw it. Nobody ever saw it. So I'm going to that building thinking everything's fine. And like I said, me spewing non-truths and this track record of lying I have, go check the deposition. All this is documented. And how would I even think about lying if it's documented? Go check it out. Anyway, this is when I get to the building. And this is when Eric tells me, you need to go see Hulk. He's got a problem with the finish. First time I'm hearing this, literally hours before the show. Okay. So I go to him, and I get the old, this isn't working for me, brother. And Hulk lays out a story. I guess this was the story that him and Eric were talking about. And they laid out a story. And basically the story was Hulk leaves with the WCW title. Now, as Hulk's laying out this story, and I know where it's going, in my mind, I'm thinking of a counter story because, like I said, he's not leaving with the WCW title. We all agreed earlier in the week Booker was going to be the champion after this show, and Booker was leaving with the title. Okay? So, Hulk's laying out this story. I'm thinking on my feet because I need a better story to pitch him. Okay? So he lays out his story, and, this is where Eric tells me, I called Brad Siegel, and he liked this story. So Eric had already had a conversation with Brad Siegel pitching their story that I was not involved in. I remember one thing Hulk saying while he was pitching the story. Hulk said to me, if this were a shoot, brother, and I remember using those words when I pitched him back. And what I basically said, and again, I have not read my book since I wrote it, so you can go check my own facts because I didn't double check that before I'm telling you this. So I basically turned around and I said to Hulk, you want to know what would really happen if this were a shoot? I said, this is what would happen, okay? I would come to the building. You would be refusing to do the job to Jeff Jarrett, or you'd be refusing to lose to Jeff Jarrett, okay? I would go to Jeff Jarrett. I would say, Jeff, screw this. I said, F him, lay down in the middle of the ring, let him cover you, let him go home with his belt. That's what I would tell Jeff Jarrett if this were a shoot. I said, basically then, Hulk, at that point, you go out there, Jarrett lays down, you cover Jarrett, you take his belt, and you go home. I said, now, once you leave the building, I will cut a scathing promo on you. That's exactly what I said. I did not give him the promo because I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know what I was going to say, how I was going to feel. I didn't know the words. I said, I will cut a scathing promo on you. I said, I will tell you to keep the title. It doesn't mean anything. And I will have a championship match between Booker and Double J to crown the WCW champion, at what point Booker would win and Booker would have the WCW title. Okay, now, at that point, when Hulk liked something or got excited about it, his eyes would light up and he'd listen. And at that point, he said to me, yeah, brother, yeah, I like that. He goes, and at that point, I would have a belt and Booker would have the belt, and then eventually me and Booker can have a match, to see who is the real WCW World Champion. Now, listen, all I was worrying about, honestly, was getting that night done. And I basically said to Hulk, I said, yeah, Hulk, I said, that could work. I said, but what I'll do is let's get this over tonight. Let's do this. You leave with the belt. Booker wins the belt. And this is what I said to Hulk. This is where I'm not lying, because this is where I made a mistake. I said to him, and I said, Hulk, once television is over, I'll get back to the office. I will call you and we'll figure out where we go from there. And I meant that. I wasn't worried about a match between Hulk Hogan and Booker T 3 months down the line when we were now probably an hour and a half, 90 minutes from showtime. I had to get tonight done. So I said, Hulk, when television's over, I'll give you a call and we'll discuss where we go from here. He said, okay. So now I did not smarten Jeff Jarrett up. I did not tell Jeff Jarrett this was a work. I handled it with Jeff like this was an absolute shoot. And I said, Hogan doesn't want to do the job. You need to lay down for him, yada, yada, yada. So now we get to the match. We go out there. I'm directing Jeff. I told Jeff to lay down for Hogan. Jeff thinks all of this is a shoot, okay? Hogan covers Jeff and leaves with the belt. So here's the first flaw. I mean, huge flaw in Eric's story. If Hulk didn't know any of this, and I was going into business for myself, and I was, making Jeff Jarrett lay down without Hulk's knowledge, think about this for a second. Why would Hulk Hogan have covered Jeff Jarrett? If he was finding this out for the first time and Vince Russo was screwing him on national television pay-per-view with the locker room going on, if this were a shoot and he knew nothing about it, do you think his instinct would be to cover Jeff Jarrett and then take the belt and leave? His instinct would have been, F you, Vince, screw you, screw this show. And Hulk probably would have left with me having my hand on my Johnson if he did not know about this and I was going into business for myself. But the fact of the matter was, the story was, you cover Jeff, then you leave with the belt because I need to go out later and cut a promo on you. That's exactly what happened. He covered Jeff. Hogan and Eric left. There was no confrontation in the back. There was no yelling. There was no screaming. There was no throwing a hissy fit. There was nothing, because that was the story. And Eric and Hulk knew that was the story. And that's why they peacefully left the building. Okay. As the show went on, I did exactly what I said I was going to do. Went out there, cut the scathing promo, had the match later on that night. Booker T won the championship, which we all agreed on. The night's over. Okay. Here's what happens following that. I go back to the office and Brad Siegel calls me in his office and he said, Vince, what happened? Because I'm sure Eric Bischoff was blowing up his phone. Because, like I said, Eric had his own story that he had originally pitched to Brad Siegel. And basically, when I explained this story to Hulk, Hulk said it worked. Hulk had creative control. So if Hulk would have said, no, I'm not doing any of this, we wouldn't have done it. He agreed to everything I said. If he didn't agree to it, why did he cover Jeff Jarrett and leave? It doesn't make any sense. So anyway, Brad said, Vince, what happened? I explained the entire story to Brad. So Brad said, how did you leave it? And I said, Brad, I told Hulk that I would call him after TV. So now I need to call him and let him know where we're going. Okay. At that point, Brad Siegel looked at me and said to me, Vince, you can't call Hulk Hogan because we can't afford to use him. We cannot afford to put him on TV right now. We can't afford to use him. Don't call him. So following the orders from Brad Siegel, my boss, the head of TBS and the head of TNT, I did not call Hulk Hogan. So technically, did I lie to Hulk by telling him I would call him after TV? Yes, I did. But the truth is, I had every intention of calling him and figuring out where we were going next until Siegel called me in the office and said, Vince, we can't put him on TV anymore. We can't afford to pay him. Don't call him. So I didn't call him. The fact that I didn't call him and the fact that everybody believed this was a shoot and Vince Russo finally put Hulk Hogan in his place, yada, yada, yada. Hulk Hogan's at home reading all this stuff. I'm not calling him. Next thing I know, I'm getting hit with a defamation of character lawsuit. At the time, Hulk is suing WCW for something else. I'm not involved in that. I never get to pose for that case. That case has nothing to do with me. I'm never a part of that. I'm sued for defamation of character. It went to a judge. A judge threw it out. Hogan appealed. It went to a second judge. A second judge threw it out. Now, keep in mind, this whole time, I'm still working for WCW. I'm still getting my paycheck. According to Eric, when I went into business for myself, not only did I screw him and Hogan, but I also screwed Brad Siegel, who was the most powerful man in the company. I also went above his orders and went into business for myself. Meanwhile, I go back to the office. I'm meeting Brad Siegel. Brad Siegel tells me not to call Hulk Hogan. I don't. I continue my job at WCW. Hogan and Bischoff never returned. Okay, those are the facts. I don't want to get into the whole because I want to kind of wrap this up here. I don't want to get into the whole TNA thing. Okay, I will tell you this. Listen, Jeff Jarrett was always in charge of creative. Okay, it was not Vince Russo. Vince Russo sat there and you know, through storyline after storyline after storyline, outed Jeff Jarrett, you know, suggested a lot of things we did, some of the things we didn't. I was not head of creative. That job was difficult for me because, you know, Jeff was a wrestler on the card. So being a wrestler and also being in charge of creative, the objective is going to be to get yourself over. And that, you know, Jeff was always the champion. You know, the show always revolved around Jeff. Every time there were creative meetings, all Jeff wanted to talk about was what was Jeff doing. That's what the majority of the time was what was Jeff doing. But Jeff was in charge of creative. I wasn't. Okay. Finally, this stuff goes down with Kurt Angle. Dixie Carter puts me in charge of creative, sends Jeff home. Me and Matt Conway are doing the creative now. Keep in mind, the whole time Jeff was there, he was the champion. So now Matt Conway and I are making a concerted effort to get the younger guys over. Okay. Behind my back, with zero knowledge, Dixie Carter is negotiating with Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan. Never once asking me, can you work with Eric? What was the relationship like with Eric? Yada, yada. Never once. Okay. Next thing I know, she calls me in her office. Eric and Hulk are hired. Eric is, according to Dixie, Eric is only going to be involved as it relates to Hulk Hogan because Hulk Hogan has creative control. Okay, fine. So I'll never forget. And listen, nobody has to believe me. There were other people there, and people tend to believe Ed Ferrara. I don't know what it is about Ed. I mean, Ed is so lovable. I believe everything Ed says. But people tend to believe Ed Ferrara. You can ask Ed Ferrara this story on your own. Don't, you know, message him, tweet him, whatever the case may be. The very first time we meet with Eric creatively, Eric takes our script and rips it up in a million pieces and basically makes the declaration that TNA did not exist before him and Hulk came. Everything we did and the entire history at that point did not matter because nobody ever cared about it. And he literally ripped up our script. If you remember, he then did the same thing in the ring. He ripped up our script in the ring. That was Eric's way of saying, I'm taking over now. I'm in charge. Screw you. Okay. So at that point, I don't know how, you know, again, never explained to Ed and myself, never explained to me and Conway or anybody. But at that point, you know, Eric now just kind of becomes a part of the creative team. And he's now sitting in on the meetings and he now has a say-so on everything. And I'm going to say this, and I've never said this before, but I need to say this now. And here's the only reason why I'm saying this, you know, because you know, Eric took the cheap shot of, you know, some of my idea. I look like Steven Spielberg compared to some of Vince's ideas. I'm going to say this now for the record. I had heat with Samoa Joe for probably a good 5 years because Samoa Joe blamed me for a storyline where ninjas captured Samoa Joe and threw him in a van and took him away with no explanation. And then he returned and there was no explanation. In Joe's mind, you know, Vince Russo was the head of creative and Vince Russo was coming up with everything. Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is that entire story came from Eric Bischoff with the white van, with the ninjas. In that capacity, when you're working creatively with other people, if somebody thinks something is a bad idea, you don't sell that person down the river. You basically tell them, well, this is what we decided on, and this is where we're going. Okay. And when it came to the white van and the ninjas, that came out of Eric's head. And I can tell you, I could tell you more because basically he wanted Superfly Jimmy Snuka to be the ringleader. And he said he could get Snuka, and Snuka kidnapped Joe and was going to mind melt Joe. I don't know what it was, but obviously he couldn't get Snuka. So now Vince had to fix what was a really, really, really bad story. But you never sold anybody down the river like, yeah, that sucked. That was Eric's story. You never said that. I never said that. So by never telling Joe that, he had heat with me for like over 5 years because Joe felt that story really hurt his career. That's why I have to laugh when I sit back and I'm hearing, well, some of Vince's ideas make me look like Steven Spielberg when I could sit here all day and I could rattle off bad ideas, but I'm not going to do that. But I wanted to share that one because I think that was important to clarify the brunt I took from it, and you know the scarred relationship I had with Joe over an idea that wasn't even mine. So now Eric's on the creative team. Now again I'm told by Dixie that the whole Monday night thing, we're going to try Monday nights, the whole 9 yards, blah 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 blah. I'm not going to get into it. You can listen. I've said this a million times. I don't blame Hulk and Eric for anything that happened at TNA. Okay, I will tell you this. What I didn't appreciate was while I was there all day, while everybody else was there all day working their ass off, okay, these guys were nowhere to be found. They would go to a hotel room, and they would literally come back an hour or two before the show. And it was usually in that hour or two when everybody has all their instructions, everybody knows what they're going to do. 2 hours before showtime, they would start changing things, not letting me know about it. That created a lot of issues. That created so many issues between myself and Eric that I brought in Bruce Pritchard to help me. Okay. Next thing I know, Bruce and Dixie are having all these sidebars. Bruce becomes my boss so he could be the go-between between Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo. So now basically me and Conway would do all the work, write the show, send it to Bruce. Bruce would send it to Eric. Eric would give his comments of what he didn't like. And there were never any suggestions to make anything better. What he didn't like. Send it back to Pritchard. Pritchard would send it back to me and Conway. Me and Conway would have to make the changes, send it to Bruce. Bruce would then add his changes, send it back to me and Conway. Me and Conway would have to make changes. It got to the point that it was ridiculous. There were so many layers and so many chefs, and it was turning into such a mess that I said to myself, you know what? This is not good for the company. Somebody's gotta leave. And I made the decision to leave. I walked out. I told him I was done. That was the end of it. That was the day that I left, TNA. But here's my point. Eric Bischoff goes on a Now, keep in mind, since I leave TNA, I don't say anything about anybody. The only thing is I had a separate sidebar with Joe, and I explained to Joe after all these years, bro, that was not my idea. Your heat is in the wrong place. I'm not going to cover for Eric Bischoff anymore because I'm not working with him. You've had heat with me over that for all these years. That was not my idea. And I said to him, I said, go ask Matt Conway. Matt Conway was in on the creative meetings. He will tell you, I thought that was a bad idea when Eric pitched it. It's what he wanted to do. Your heat's in the wrong place. Outside of that, I never publicly said anything about Erica Hulk. I never blamed them for the demise of TNA, for what they were getting paid compared to other people. None of that. I 100% took the high road. Okay. Eric now gets paid by the WWE to do a documentary of the Monday Night Wars. And of course, during the course of that, here comes let's bury Vince Russo time. Vince Russo is not there to defend himself. And Eric Bischoff is calling BS on everything. I'm a liar. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm all these things. Now, keep in mind, Eric Bischoff's getting paid. I don't know if Eric Bischoff wants to work for the WWE again. He probably does. I'm sure he's bored with whatever he's doing. So he makes all these allegations, right? This is what I'm talking about now. This is where you really got to get facts straight, and you really got to decide of who's telling the truth and who's bullshitting. That's really what you have to decide. He says all these things. I sit here trying to be composed, trying to be cool, calm, and collected. I cut a video and I literally show you where the holes of his story are. You know, how I went into business for myself and I screwed, this is all his story. I went into my business for myself and I screwed him and Hulk. Also, by going into business for myself, I went over the head of Brad Siegel, the head of TBS and the head of TNT. I went over his head when going into business for myself. On top of that, I caused TBS a lawsuit that was thousands and thousands and however much money Eric said it was because of all this that took place. Yet the fact of the matter is, after Bash at the Beach, I'm working for TBS and I'm working for WCW, and I'm still in the position of my job, and Hogan and Eric are no longer with the company. Now, would you not think if I went over a network executive's head, I would have been fired the very next day? But I wasn't fired. I was called into his office. Brad asked me what happened. I laid everything out. He gave me the instructions. Don't call Hulk. We can't afford to use him. So I calmly poked holes in all areas of his story, basically saying, bro, if I went into business for myself and I told Jarrett to lay down, why would Hulk cover Jarrett? Why would you and Hulk not confront me after the fact if I showed you up in front of everybody? It makes absolutely no sense. And I pointed out why. A, B, C, D, and E. I pointed it out. And I basically said to Eric, you want to come here face to face? You want to talk about this? You want to debate me on it? I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Okay. I have nothing to hide. I know what the truth is. I know what went down. So Eric responds yesterday. Once, like I said, everything he said, I addressed everything. And I said, you want to debate this? You want to talk about this? I'll be more than happy to do this. He comes back with, don't think any clear thinking person would conflate truth and anything spewed by Vince Russo, #track record. First of all, let me make one thing clear. I didn't spew anything. Eric did the spewing. He went on the WWE network. He did the spewing. He laid out a story. I defended myself. I told you what the holes were in the story. Okay. So rather than come back with, well, we didn't confront you in the back because of this, and you weren't fired because of that, rather than come back with any of that, he totally ignored everything I said, which was the truth, and said, any clear thinking person would conflate truth and anything spewed by Vince Russo. So he didn't address any of my points, nothing. It's just Vince Russo is a liar and has a track record of lying. A track record means I have a history of lying. Somebody show me where this history of lying is, in the wrestling business. Somebody show me where a wrestler has come forward and ever said Vince Russo lied to me. Do you know how many wrestlers I've worked with in WWE, WCW, and TNA? Do you know how many wrestlers have come on this show and allowed me to interview them? Do you know how many wrestlers have come to my aid? Mick Foley on the last show and said, no, Vince really did contribute a lot. He doesn't get the credit for it. I've never heard one wrestler, not one, on record anywhere, say Vince Russo is a liar. If Eric Bischoff is talking about the one incident where I lied to cover Dixie Carter and TNA, yes, I did. I did what my boss told me to do, and I lied for my company. I admitted to that. I apologize for that. I made a mistake. I would listen. I needed a job, and I needed the money. And when Dixie Carter said, "Don't say anything," that I needed a job, so I abided by the boss's rules. At the end of the day, it made me look like a liar when I could have cared less if anybody knew I was consulting for TNA. What did I care? It wasn't up to me. It was up to the person that hired me. So, if this is what he's talking about, I've already addressed that. I've already said I was wrong. I already said I should have left the money on the table and not taken the job under those circumstances. And if I had to do it again, that's exactly what I would do. But a track record of lying means there's a history of lying. Bring me one talent that says I lied to him. Bring me anybody I ever worked with that said I lied to them. So, but by this blanket statement, there's no addressing the facts. There's no addressing all my questions to his comments on that tape. There's just Vince Russo's a liar, and anybody that believes him is not a clear thinking person. Then when it comes to bro, come on here and talk to me face to face. We'll have a face to face discussion. His answer to that was, will never happen, would never give any credibility to anything he has to say. So that's his answer with not meeting me man to man, face to face, me asking him the same questions that I asked when I saw that tape, so I could see how he would answer those. Just the fact that I would never give any credibility to anything he said. So listen, it's right there. And like I said, I've addressed it. I've asked questions. I've asked, well, why did this happen then? And why didn't you do this? And why didn't you that? I didn't get a response. He won't debate me. He won't come on here man to man. So at that point, you can make the decision of whether Vince Russo is has a track record of lying. That's totally up to you. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you think I do, please unsubscribe from the brand. If you think I am a liar and I've got a track history of lying and I don't tell the truth and I'm that kind of a human being, I am telling you, cancel your subscriptions and do not subscribe. Do not listen to anything I say. Do not give me any credibility whatsoever. If you believe I'm that person, please do not support me. I don't want you to support me. But again, this goes back to, like, is my instinct as a human being to totally torch this man and bury this man and come up with instance after instance after instance of what really happened and the way I really saw things? Yes, that's my gut instinct. But I got to tell you, even at this point, I can't do that because it's not my nature anymore. And when I look at the comments Eric made that were personal comments that questioned my integrity, he came right out and called me a liar. I have no credibility, all this, that, even with all those things said, it is not in my character to personally attack Eric Bischoff. I cannot do that. I told you the instance with the little story with the Samoa Joe to show you how I took the bullet for 5 years. I lost a friendship for 5 years by not burying somebody else. It's not my nature. It's not what I do, because I'm going back to the very, very beginning now. We are all a creature of our environment. Eric Bischoff handles things the way he does. He handles people the way he does because of his background and what happened in his childhood and the way he was raised and what happened to him in life. And I'm not privy to any of those things. I don't know any of those things. I gave you my background. I told you why I'm the man that I am today. And my father is still my idol. He is still my role model. To this day, I have my father's work ethic. But to this day, I'm not going to allow anybody to walk on me and to question my character and to question my integrity and to call me a liar and to say I have a track record of lying. That I will not allow. And I'm here 7 days of the week in front of you on this screen and have said numerous times all the allegations that are made towards me, all the things that I've said. Numerous times I have said, come on here with me. One-on-one, face-to-face. You have something to say it to me. You have an accusation. I lied to you. I made something up. Whatever the situation is, you come on here with me and we will address the situation. That never happens. There's always a reason for that not to happen. Eric Bischoff's reason is will never happen, would never give any credibility to anything he has to say. That's his reason for not coming on here face to face and saying, Vince, you're a liar. You have a history of lying. You have a track record of lying. He has the opportunity. He doesn't do it. I'm here. I will have a conversation with anybody. Listen, there's a guy coming on my show next week, Dave Wills. Dave Wills is the "it's still real to me, damn it" guy. Okay, that's who Dave Wills is. Dave Wills comes on my show. He's got a "I'm a Jim Cornette guy" shirt on. He's got all Jim Cornette's books there, and he comes on the show wanting to be confrontational. And I basically said to Dave, and you'll see it next week, I said, listen, bro, I'm not going to be confrontational with you because we have different philosophies on wrestling. That has nothing to do with personal, what I think about you personally. You're going to have one view on wrestling. I'm going to have another view. I'm not going to not like you because of our wrestling views. And I went as far as to say, bro, you want to promote Jim Cornette's books? Promote Jim Cornette's books. Dave Wills went and promoted Jim Cornette's books. I promoted Jim Cornette's podcast show, MLW. You want to listen to Jim Cornette? That's where he is. MLW, go listen to him. And by the end of the conversation, I mean, I think Dave Wills saw, okay, bro, I've got an opinion. You've got an opinion. I respect your opinion. I'm not going to dislike you because of your opinion. I'm not going to dislike you because you're wearing a Jim Cornette shirt. I'm not going to fight with you because you're selling a Jim Cornette book. That's not me. So the fact of the matter is, like I said, guys, there it is. That's me. That's who I am. That's the story. Eric Bischoff wants to debate at any time, wants to talk to me man to man, face to face, anytime. I am there, and I will lay out the facts to him just like I laid out the facts to you. If he chooses not to do that, well, that's his choice. But I want to make one thing perfectly clear. You're watching this because you support me, and I appreciate that more than anything in the world. Trust me, if I did not have this outlet, I don't know what I'd go out there and do. I mean, I obviously don't, but thank God I've got this outlet. I have people that follow me and believe in me and find me that entertaining, and it helps me pay my bills at the end of the day. And I still give the 150% I gave when I was in the wrestling business. But like I said, if for a second you think I'm lying to you, or I've got a track history of lying, or you don't believe anything I say, please unsubscribe. Please don't support me and don't follow me. I'm telling you right now, if that's the way you feel, I don't blame you. Don't support me. But like I said, man, Vince Russo is an Italian kid from Long Island. I'm still here. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I will take anybody on head on. And anybody wants to confront me, I'm there for the confrontation. But whether I'm 54 or 64 or 74 or 84, nobody's going to walk on me like I saw my father walked on his entire lifetime, because he was a nice guy. I am a nice guy too. But when you start accusing me of things, when you start questioning my integrity, when you start questioning my character, we're going to have an issue. And Christian or non-Christian, I am going to stand up for myself with the truth and nothing but the truth. So there you have it, everybody. I hope that wasn't too much. I know it was a long chicken necks. but there were just a lot of things I had to get out to the people that matter, and those are the people that support me. You know, you read these things, in my opinion, you deserve an explanation. You just got an explanation. As always, everybody, thanks for joining me. Thanks for supporting the brand. I love each and every one of you. Have a great day.